This podcast acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we record, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. We also acknowledge the neighbouring Kulin Nation groups, the Bunwurrung and Bunurong people, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. We also extend that respect to any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities who may be listening today.
Love at first sight, you and me that breathless night. Love took shape and body in the morning light. We were sure this could never have happened before, never before.
Hello and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Glitter and Gold, the original Steps podcast. We are the first podcast dedicated to discussing and dissecting the legacy of Steps, the UK's biggest mixed gender pop group of all time. Welcome back to part two. I am your host Shane, and I am joined by my very own Beauty and the Beast. We have Brad and we have Scott, and I'll let you all decide on who is who.
My name was first.
Clearly, I'm the beauty. I'm not the brains.
My Belle and what's the Beast's name? I forget. It's just called the Beast, isn't it? Belle, and because Belle is the girl. Anyway, moving on.
I was just going to say to the both of you, I feel like I saw you just yesterday.
Just yesterday.
If you listened to our Steps reunion episode, you will get that reference. If you've rewatched it lately.
Brad, what's part two of our episode about?
In part one of our H and Claire deep dive, we talked about the formation of the duo as well as their three singles, DJ, Half a Heart, and the double A side All Out of Love, Beauty and the Beast. Now in part two, we'll be taking you through the album as well as the sad conclusion of the H and Claire story. Let's go now to a tale as old as time. 2 weeks after the release of All Out of Love, the album Another You, Another Me was released on November 18th, 2002.
H and Claire's brilliant new album, Another You, Another Me. Introducing the massive hits, Half a Heart, DJ, Beauty and the Beast, and All Out of Love. Pure pop perfection from H and Claire. Another You, Another Me. Out now.
So the album had some big-name songwriters on board, including Swedish writer Jorgen Elofsson, who wrote It's the Way You Make Me Feel by Steps, and has also written for Boyzone, Clarkson, Britney Spears, Sebastian, and Westlife, just to name a few. They also had Sam Waters, who also wrote Im Outta Love by Anastasia, and Mark Topham and Karl Twigg were also on board and wrote a couple of tracks. And the title track, Another You, Another Me, was actually written by two guys from, I don't know if you've heard of them, Abba.
Sound familiar.
Familiar.
They might be big.
So reviews for the album were mixed. Guardian gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And they said, always the members of Steps, most in love with showbiz. Claire with music, H with the camera. H and Claire now want to be the Sonny and Cher of the plastic pop generation. Staying true to the big Europop sound of Steps, their debut sounds a little bit more grown up, without losing any of their freakish charm. DJ uses every trick in the disco handbook, from hand claps to synth vocals, while All I Want Is You has girly anthem stamped all over it. I think now that would be Hun anthem, let's be honest.
That was one thing I forgot to mention, and I was thinking about it in the car, is the bloody hand claps in DJ. I was like, yes, that review is, while it's shady, it's correct. They did use all the disco tracks. It's a little bit shady.
It's a little bit shady. It's not too bad. Yeah,
it's a little bit shady.
That was a bit, but I mean, look, it's H and Claire. Like they were never, even like Steps, like they were never going to get great reviews. I think 3 out of 5 by The Guardian is pretty strong. And to be honest, I don't know about you guys, but I actually, having listened to the album again quite a fair bit over the last few days, like it actually stands up really well. What are your standout tracks? I've got quite a few.
My first standout track on the album, it has to be the title track of the album, Another You, Another Me.
Strangers somehow. Another you, another me. It was the dawn of the first day of life, and only
So as you said, Brad, it was written by Benny and Bjorn from Abba, and it was actually originally recorded by Swedish brother and sister duo Gemini in 1985 for their debut album, and then it was released as a single in Sweden in 1986. And the H and Claire version was given reworked lyrics, notably in the verses by Bjorn. It's very ABBA meets West End stage show to me, this track. Claire's vocals are like 10 out of fucking 10. In fact, 11 out of 10. Her vocals are insane, especially those high notes in the last chorus as well. Just incredible. And I listening to this and listening to all of these songs, I would really love to see Claire incorporate this particular track into her solo shows. I just think it would really fit beautifully as a little bit of a sit down moment. I would love to see this song performed at some point by either H and Claire or by Claire. Incredible song.
I'm with you there, Scott. And I didn't really back then pick up on the symbolism of Another You, Another Me. This is a representation. This is the reason why this is the title track of the album and why I think Claire belts it and the lyrics on it, the vocals on it are incredible, is because I reckon they got this track and they were like, that's us. This is another H, another Claire, or them attempting to be another H, another Claire. That's not Steps-ish, if you know what I mean. So there's a bit of symbolism behind that as well. And even just the lyrics, it just fits with what they're trying to do at the moment. I'm with you there on all of that. You know, Brad, the other day you said it needs maybe a 2024 refresh. And I kind of understand where you're coming from, like what happened with Story of a Heart on Tears on the Dance Floor. But I don't know. The dramatics of this song are incredible. So much drama, which is a theme throughout this entire album, actually, when you think about it. I really like it. It's a standout track for me as well.
Can you guys hear that? The sirens?
Nope.
Any sirens? No.
No.
Really? It sounds like the FBI is coming. Federal Brad investigations.
Oh,
Got
Jesus.
I was like, is there sirens in your
I was
house?
like the sirens in his head. Anyway.
The sirens in my head, yes. No, so I have a couple of fun facts about this one during my research last night. They actually tried to get this song, like, I think their management was on the case for like 6 months trying to get an ABBA related song for this album. So I know that their manager flew to Sweden in either February or March to start conversations. Sir Tim Rice, who I think wrote like the music for Aladdin or whatever, he was part of it. He actually said to Benny and Bjorn on a flight, "Oh, you should write a song for H and Claire." And then it was eventually recorded on the 27th and the 28th of August 2002 as one of the last songs for the album.
Claire's done that before, actually. So she's history repeated with Euphoria.
That last minute recording.
Yeah, so Euphoria was a last minute recording, ended up being the title track of the album. It's funny how you go through a process and you're like, okay, we've got all these songs and what's going to happen? And the title track ends up being one of the last things you ever do, on like the last things you do for that project.
But also the fact that it was a cover of a song by Gemini, and then Gemini, another version of Gemini, like
With a J.
with the J, would end up being the Eurovision Song Act in 2003, which was envisioned for H and Claire, and they said no. So that song, "Cry Cry Baby," that was all like full circle.
Oh,
I'll be glad they didn't do that. But as I mentioned, we do have a group chat, and I did say in the group chat I would love like a Story of a Heart 2024 version of it. I think. I didn't like it as a kid. I definitely appreciate it a lot more now.
It's the same for this whole album, to be honest. Confession, I didn't buy this album until only about 5 years ago. I had listened to it when it came out. By that point, I'd moved on by the time the album had come out. And because it wasn't released in Australia, it wasn't as easy to get. And I could never find it on import at HMV or anything like that. So I didn't pay much attention to the album apart from the singles and maybe a track here or there. But listening to this album now as a 30-something, it almost is a little bit of ahead of its time, because it's an album that H and Claire could release now and people would be here for it. But because overall there's a lot of mid-tempos, I think what was on offer as the singles didn't really reflect what the album was in a lot of ways. DJ and All Outta Love are very high tempo, but the rest of the album, apart from a couple of tracks, are very mature mid tempo. So definitely didn't appreciate this album at the time, but do now as an adult. The next track that I wanted to shout out was All I Want Is You.
Try to run away, but
It was written by John Reed, Mark Topham, and Karl Twigg. And did you know, fun fact, John Reed went on to write If This Is Love by The Saturdays. So there's a little Steps Fascination management connection there. A Moment Like This by Kelly Clarkson, and also Leona Lewis did a version a few years later. And Love on My Mind by the Freemasons, who, you know, Steps Connection, Freemasons did also do the F9 remix of 100 Years of Winter. So that little Steps connection there. And you cannot tell me that this song doesn't sound like One Day in Your Life by Anastasia.
Literally.
It's a carbon ripoff.
Literally.
Yes.
Or inspired by, but it definitely is so similar to that song. But I actually think this could have been a single.
I actually think, in retrospect, and not because, and I've already just told you both, I love Half a Heart. I think this actually, in retrospect, should have been the second single, Late Summer Banger. If they, and also keep down that pop route.
If this had been the second single, it may have done better. Or they would have said, it sounds too much like Anastasia's One Day in Your Life, which came out around the same time.
Yeah, that's probably why it wasn't released, actually, because, yeah, that came out in February 2002. So that was too close.
It did get a performance on SMTV as well during album release week, which I appreciated.
Actually, One Day in Your Life only went to number 11, so in the UK, so maybe it was actually a good choice going with Half a Heart, top 10.
But yeah, I love this track. It's just a really upbeat, fun little bop.
A shout out track for me, and we've talked about, you know, it being mid-tempo, a mid-tempo album. And I said this to you, Scott, off air, like it's very mid album. The album as a whole, the singles for me stand out better than some of the album tracks. Don't get me wrong, the album tracks are great. I think that's just my preference. The standout other track that's not a single for me is actually Too Close to Tears. I love that little end of the album. Lift Me Up mid-tempo. It's sort of mid to high tempo bop, and I just enjoy the key change and the lyrics and just the way the notes are carried across in it. I just have a lot of it. Makes me feel warm. It's the feeling I get from it. That was my standout track. It's written by H and Claire and Paul Barry as well. But obviously, it was never released as a single. But I have a feeling that it could have been slated, had the album gone gangbusters, slated as a fifth single release, like the final, like what Better Best Forgotten was after step one.
That was the rumor. It was either that or Another You, Another Me was going to be the next single.
How the fades away. Wish it was yesterday. One day we're gonna laugh about it. Maybe to write a song about it. Now we're too close to tears, too hurt to talk anymore. One day you're gonna meet me somewhere. We'll look back without a care. But now we're too close to tears. It's too bad we lost. I don't wanna talk about us anymore.
Do you think Too Close to Tears is written about steps?
I would say yes, perhaps a little bit. There's some inspiration there. They would be leading on, not completely, but a little bit. What do you think it is?
I think 100% it is. Yeah. No, I think those lyrics, it's because, like, you know, I don't want to sing it, but
Please do.
and I don't think anyone ever asked them, because they didn't, obviously once the album came out, they kind of stopped promo for it. But I always wondered whether the record labels were like, just in case we need a song about the breakup. That's the cynical part of me. But I think it stands up. I think it's still like a song that even as a band, like they could all listen back to and be like, oh, you were probably on the note, like you were probably right there. Like, you know, at the time that, you know, one day they are going to laugh about it, they probably do now. So everything ends well. Scott, you were doing some reading there, I saw.
I was reading I was looking at the lyrics to Too Close to Tears, but I was then looking at the credits of H and Claire's thanks. And the last line of Claire's thanks is, she says, "Here's to our future, and finally to absent friends." She kind of thanks the other three without sort of saying it. That's what I just think. I just found that fascinating. I'd not seen that before, hadn't seen it in a long time. Brad, what's your standout track?
My standout track is a bit of a left turn. It is No Turning Back, and it was written by H. Claire and Jorgen Elofsson.
Falling for the fire, love has never ever looked so beautiful. Never ever felt so wonderful, so wonderful. There's no turning back. Falling for the fire,
no turning back, that wasn't really one of the songs that I thought I was gonna like going into the album, because like I knew in advance there was a lot of mid tempos and I was getting ready to skip them, but like this one really stood out because it was kind of not indie, but it sounds a bit like Holly Valance's Naughty Girl.
I can see the Naughty Girl reference. I get it. I do see it.
It also has another great key change. I love a key change. There are quite a good number of ones on this album, and that's one of my favorites. I've got a couple of other thoughts just about the album in general. Starting with the positive, I would actually say, having listened back to it the last couple of days, it's top 5, if not top 3 albums as a body of work. I think it's really actually quite strong. I would say it's definitely better than Step 1 in the Steps canon. I actually think as a body of work, it's really strong. I just think it's bloated. That's like probably one of the best, like a 12-track album. Get rid of your love songs, Two Outspeed It's One, Invincible. Maybe have Beauty and the Beast as just like a single only track. I don't think you need it there. Maybe put in Don't Give Up, Don't Let Go, or even Hold Me in Your Arms, the whole Daniel Bedingfield factor in there. And I think that's a really strong 12-track album. I think part of it's because I didn't get it at the time. I think I got it a few months later. I think Agent Claire have, they talked about it since, and, they should be proud of it. It's a fantastic album. We also have to acknowledge that There You Were is a cover of the Jessica Simpson and Mark Anthony duet, which was featured on her 2001 album Irresistible. And to be honest, the Agent Claire version doesn't really stray too far from the original version. I think it just ends sooner. It's just a bit shorter.
Reach through the hurricane when you, baby, you call my name. You broke through the storm and you turned back the night. Baby, you are the fire burning the midnight sky, and your light keeps taking me higher. Just when our hope was gone, we're the hero in love. There you were.
I really like that cover.
I think I was too close to the Jessica Simpson version. Like that was one. I remember June 2002 going to Bali on that trip that I recorded the demo CD, and this was one of the singles. This is one of the albums I got back. From
Oh,
the
at the
markets.
at the markets, the
Yeah.
burnt CD markets.
So it was only 5 months earlier. So I was like, this is a good album, but Jessica Simpson's Irresistible, underrated album.
yeah.
But yeah, I played this one a lot. So the Asian Claire version, it's like when you listen to Hard to Forget, it just doesn't live up to the hype.
Because it was too, and also because it was a current song. It was
Yeah.
only, yeah.
So before we get into the stats, let's go into some final fun facts. H confirmed around the time of All Out of Love coming out that they had actually held back some songs from Diane Warren and apparently Sir Tim Rice for a future release. This was actually confirmed like 20 odd years later, because Claire said in an interview that Diane actually visited H and Claire during the filming of one of their videos. I'm guessing either DJ or Beauty and the Beast, either in America or like in a recording studio.
Yeah, I reckon it probably would have been All Out of DJ because they were in America. That probably would make the most sense.
And she was trying to get them to record the track. My instinct is that they probably put a hold on them, but I don't think they recorded either of them, because I think they would have leaked or something in that time. Now, Jen Steps has an article stating that the song was going to be called I Know What I Feel, but to this day, it was never recorded by anyone else. And really interesting, and this shocked me, was that H also said in an interview that they wrote songs with Dane Bowers, the chart stats. And I really want to have a conversation about this, because then and now still doesn't really make sense to me. Another You, Another Me was released on the 18th of November 2002. Chart peak at number 58 after midweeking at number 50. It did make number 51 on the Scottish album charts, so there's always that. It spent 2 weeks in the UK Top 100. It was certified silver on the week of release due to 60,000 units being shipped to stores in anticipation of being sold. Its complete top 200 chart run was 58, 97, 128 out. And a week later, Jive Records, Steps' old record label, put out The Last Dance, a collection of B-sides and remixes. And sales are unknown, but it did peak at number 57 to H and Claire's 58. So we were talking about this a lot during the chat, because I would be featuring kind of anecdotes that I remember online and you guys being like, look, that's a bit negative. But I'm trying to make sense of why this happened. How after 3 top 10 singles, why the fans weren't there for the album. I mean, I've got thoughts, but do you guys have any thoughts?
They shooted for a specific target and missed. And the album was too maybe mid-tempo-y and maybe the public wanted more steps. I don't know. DJ went really well, but this is very indicative with what happens when a pop band breaks up and a couple of them go off and do solo stuff or whatever. They ride that wave of being in the pop band for a bit and then it peters off. And unfortunately, it just petered off really quickly for H and Claire.
And this was a question that we were talking about earlier. Like, I don't know who their target market was. Who do you think it was?
I think it was a combination of the Steps fans that had grown up into young adults and their parents, perhaps.
I think that at this point, the public were invested enough to buy a single, but I don't think that there was enough momentum and I don't know if momentum's the right word. I just don't think that there was enough. What am I trying to say?
No, I think you're right with the momentum. Like the momentum was there with DJ, and then as soon as they released Half a Heart, that's not what the public wanted.
This wasn't a situation where it was like someone leaving a band going solo. This was essentially a whole new musical group project. So it takes time to build trust with the public and to build a fan base again, because not everyone that was a Steps fan was on board for this, because by default, people just peter off. They move on to other things. They grow up. Their musical taste changes. And back then, things changed very quickly. I just think that there wasn't enough time and they were aiming for the busiest time of the year to release an album. So like Q4, which is when this was, is arguably when you release the biggest albums from the biggest artists because sales are higher. And Steps had always done that model because they were Steps, but this isn't Steps. This is a brand new musical act and they're starting again.
You make a good point there, Scott, about a new musical act and earning the audience's trust per se, or fandom. I think perhaps maybe from the record label and even H and Claire themselves, there was a lot of that assumed fandom would just carry across.
Yeah.
And that may have happened with DJ, but then that assumed fandom likes Steps, right? So they like that sound. And then Half a Heart comes out and it's not that sound. That's not saying it's not a bad song. It's just not the sound that the assumed fandom is used to. I myself, being one of them, probably dropped off a little bit.
Which is the same.
Which is why when they released All Out of Love, I was back on board. I think there's a bit of that there. Also, the other thing I'll point out, we touched on this before, when I say back on board, as in like I was going up on the roller coaster.
There wasn't consistency. There was
Correct.
like in terms
bit
of the
messy.
musical output. They were trying to sort of throw something and see what would stick. Oh no, we've gone off course. We're going to go back onto this other track to see if this will work. And it just,
I will say you made a good point. You said you came back on board for All Out of Love, but where I've landed is that you were back on board, but it was no longer a must-have. Like you have to go out and get the album as soon as it came out.
correct.
Whereas for Steps, you would have, but for Agent Claire, it can wait. And I think a lot of fans were the same, probably, and they just went, you know what? It's a big, when you're a kid, £25, or whatever it was. Like that's a big investment. As you say, Scott, buy a single's fine, but yeah, the album not so much. And so you had the reviews coming out saying that there were a lot of ballads. Yeah, you had 3 singles before it where, again, wildly different sounds. And it's just, there's just no impetus to rush out to get it on release week. It's almost like a wait and see, like, oh, I'll see what my friends think first or what the other fans think first.
And I'll just preface, like, for those listening, these are our opinions. This is what we think, our assumptions or our analysis of the rollout, and whether you agree or not is up to you. That doesn't make it any bad or good. It's just the facts, I guess, we're talking about. We're discussing and dissecting, So
how would each of you have done the album rollout?
I think they started with the correct single. The second single, I don't know. Actually, I actually don't know.
Would you go straight to All Out of Love?
See, this is the thing. If they had started with All Out of Love, I think that would have been a miss because that would have been 2 steps sounding, whereas this one was a bit still of that disco-y trend that was happening at the end of 2001 sort of thing. So they were still writing that similar pop vibe, but moving into that more mature look and mature look and feel for them. Because don't forget, like Steps' last single was Words Are Not Enough, but remember they were going to release Baby Don't Dance, and that has that disco-y sound to it as well. So that was sort of happening at the time. But
That's a good point. Yeah.
yeah, so I think the first single they released definitely on the money there, but they were trying to like, all right, the first one stuck, let's try and be cool, and they just missed the mark there.
I wonder how this album would have done had it come out a month earlier as well. I don't know why. Just like again, November that's a really busy time. A lot of big albums are released at that time of year. Maybe if it was just a month earlier, could that have made a little bit of a difference when there wasn't so much big albums being released? Maybe it should have come out after the second single. Maybe the second single shouldn't have been Half a Heart. Maybe the second single should have been All Out of Love, and then you lead the album with All I Want Is You and Beauty and the Beast. I don't know that doing that would have really changed much around people's investment in them. Like you said, Brad, with Steps, it was a must have. Every album, every single, I was invested. I had to have it. But with H and Claire, I probably maybe there was probably maybe a little bit more trust or investment I needed to make first before deciding to really invest in H and Claire as a group and as a brand.
Another point to make is they were trying to ride high off Steps ending not that long ago and still ride that Steps wave. Whereas if they had given some breathing room and some time for people to maybe not think about Steps or think about what had happened and let that yearning for Steps sound, they could have maybe given it a year and released something in 2003, and maybe the first single could have been All Out of Love or something like that, and it may have had a different impact.
I do wonder if Steps had stayed together, I don't think it would have been as dramatic, but this could have potentially been how Steps could have ended up like it could, because eventually it happened to S Club. They slowly started to peter off. Maybe it was a bit of that as well, that there wasn't enough of a gap. Maybe had H and Claire come back in 2003 when there was a bit more yearning for that nostalgia, or there was a bit of a breathing space, maybe that would have made a difference. They were sort of riding the wave of Steps, but then that wave maybe was starting to come down as well, potentially. So who knows?
I just want to make one last point with the Steps thing, is that we talked about this with The Last Dance, but at the same time as All Love Love's coming out, you had in competing weeks, you had Baby Don't Dance was meant to be a single on the 11th of November.
And then that actually got cancelled because apparently the band blocked it. Or that I don't know how. I remember that was conversation at the time where the band individually or as a group, or I don't know, but there was some of them tried to block it from happening because they didn't have control over it. And so I think the label at least maybe tried to cancel the single to avoid, a low charting position.
But regardless, you had Jive pushing that pretty hard. Like there were ads in it in the smash hit. So there was a video clip. So I guess if you're a fan, and I don't know if this was actually the case, as you say, Shane, we're just discussing and dissecting opinions, not necessarily facts. But if you've only got pocket money to buy one CD a month, do you buy Another You, Another Me, or do you buy The Last Dance?
Which is a compilation of all Steps remixes that, I know for me here in Australia, we didn't get all the releases, so we didn't have all the remixes. So getting The Last Dance, like when I was able to pick up that CD and put it in my car and have all my favorite Step songs remix all packaged together in one sort of package.
Exactly. So if you're a fan, do you go for the nostalgia, or do you go for an album of what's being reported in the media as mid tempos, even though it actually stands up quite well?
For me personally, the song that I fell in love with the most was All Out of Love, and I had that song already, so I don't know if I necessarily need to buy the album. I'll go buy The Last Dance, which is exactly what I did. Looking back on it as an adult and with my nostalgia and more grown-up love for Steps, as opposed to my adolescent love that I have back then, which is a bit more focused, tunnel-visioned, I should say, I think the album I prefer it now than I did back then, that's for sure. Definitely, as an adult.
I almost wonder again, hindsight 2020, if I was 20 years ago, I would have just told them, look, maybe just do single by single and just stay on SMTV and become TV presenters.
Yeah, but that wasn't how it worked back then. They didn't, it was, you had to have an album. Like, it wasn't just release a single here. It was an all or nothing thing back then.
When I was mentioning before the breathing space, perhaps between Steps ending and maybe H and Claire releasing an album, is there was no time for fans to really process the breakdown of Steps.
It was 4 weeks, which is, when you look at it now, 4 weeks is fucking wild.
No time for us to process that. Like, I remember actually genuinely being pretty upset when I read that on Boxing Day, and like it like on some level ruined Christmas a little bit. But they could have. This is obviously, or what could have been, still stayed relevant by presenting on TV for a year or something like that as presenters, with a slow move towards some music towards the end of 2002, giving that breathing space, but still staying in our screens and relevant, and not people letting forget who they are, but by building their own brand of H and Claire. They could have done that, but it didn't happen that way. So these are all just hypotheticals at the moment.
After the album didn't end up the success it was hoped to be, things quickly became quiet in the H and Claire camp. In Claire's autobiography, she said, "When our album was released and charted at number 58, I refused to do anything else. All of these things were building up and I felt like I was on the verge of a breakdown. I didn't want to put a brave face on it anymore, and I couldn't stand the embarrassment of turning up at TV and radio shows to promote the album when everyone knew it hadn't been the success it should have been. I kept having visions of Lisa, Lee and Faye getting together to have a good old laugh at me and H." She went on further to say that at the end of that year, she told management that after the appearances they still had to commit to, "I'm not doing anything else after that. I can't face it," she said. They had one commitment left in the diary in January 2003 at Disneyland Paris to perform Beauty and the Beast, and Claire details in her book as well that performance was a shambles. They were holding a big princess ball to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the film, during which we would sing our version of Beauty and the Beast. We'd done a rehearsal in the afternoon, so we knew the plan was for us to start singing, and then all the Disney characters would walk out from the back of the stage to join us. We were not singing live for some reason, and that evening when we were waiting in the wings to perform for real, the songs suddenly started playing before we could get on stage and pick up our mics. H and I were frozen to the spot. "Isn't that your song? Get on the stage," someone shouted. Then the characters started parading on, and I thought, there is no way I'm walking out there when my voice is already blaring out of the speakers, then picking up a mic. It was too late to stop the characters coming down, so the Beast, Belle, Prince Charming, and Cinderella all came on stage, then stood there looking confused in front of 2 empty mic stands. The show's director wanted us to go back on and perform the song again, but refused to send the characters back down. It was all very funny and very chaotic. On the 3rd of March 2003, H and Claire confirmed the duo were on a break with the following post on their official website. "Sorry to have been out of touch for so long. We have noticed a lot of misinformed speculation on the message board lately, which seems to be upsetting some people. For the record, we are currently taking a break, but we're still with Warner Records, and you guys will of course be the first to know what we're going to be up to next. Love, H and Claire." So interestingly, Claire did initially intend to carry on, but her plans went further astray when H and Claire's management team, Burn Blood, also broke up, with Vicky Blood moving to New Zealand. I would say that the H and Claire era went on to be somewhat of a taboo topic at times, with the pair not always acknowledging it as a most positive experience in the years that followed. But we definitely saw that after Steps' reunion in 2011, they both started to acknowledge it in a more positive light, with Claire even praising the album. Claire did perform All Out of Love on her solo tour in 2018, as well as at GAY for her album launch in 2019.
Can't keep coming back for one last try. If history repeat itself this time, take a long lane, but I'll never make the same mistake again. I won't be that far running back to you. Won't fall apart like I used to do. Enough is enough. You've hurt me too much. Won't be that one that keeps holding on. I can't stay
On H's radio show in 2020, the pair reminisced on the experience and said they were both very proud of what they did together.
So, right, let's talk steps or life after steps. Right.
Yeah.
I am so proud of all of our achievements in the band, but you and I took on another challenge after steps, didn't we? We joined forces. Tell everybody.
Yeah, we did. We became the very cleverly titled H and Claire. Some might say it should have been Claire and H, but
And if you don't use the ampersand, it's hand, Claire.
yeah, it's hand Claire, which we didn't realise. So you have to use the ampersand. Yeah, so we were really lucky, I think, to be able to go off and to do an album together, which I'm really proud of. I think, you know, I don't know what everybody expected after Steps split, and I think they might have thought that we would just go off and do Steps stuff with just the two of us, but we didn't want to do that, did we? We wanted to kind of do the music that we liked.
And we got to choose, you know, there were some incredible songwriters and producers. We had Jorgen Elofsson, was part of the massive Swedish sect, and he did loads of Britney stuff. He gave us a song that Celine wanted, and he gave it to us. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It was some of the things that we did during that. I mean, it was only about a year, wasn't it, that we were doing it? But
I mean, we had some.
It was brilliant.
Again, pop music always wins, and we did DJ, Half a Heart, All Out of Love, which I thought crossed the bridge. It was very Steps, that song.
Yeah, but I remember at the time I really fought against having that as a single. I was like,
you fought against the dance routine.
But I always fight against the dance routine. That was hard, but that one was hard. But I do remember thinking, no, it's two steps. We shouldn't do it. I was really against it. But listening to it now, I think that song really stands up today. I think you listen to that and it doesn't sound like it was from 2002 at all.
I know that you did it on your solo tour last year.
Yeah.
Because, bless you, because you did call me. You went, do you mind if I do?
I know.
But of course I don't mind. If I could have been there, I would have.
Yeah, do you know what? And it was so, you know, obviously didn't do it as full on as we did it. Like, I remember whenever we used to go and do a TV with that song, they get, you know, you have to rehearse about 3 times for cameras and stuff, and by the time we got to the actual performance we were so exhausted because the dance routine, even the dancers were like, oh my god, not again, please.
I mean, it was really hard when you leave a pop band. You're pigeonholed and everybody expects you to do one thing, and like you said, we tried to do something else, and sometimes they expect you to do something and you're like, oh, and we tried to combine. We actually did. We took on 2 jobs. We had SMTV to present, so we took over I think it must have been for about 9 months we did SMTV. It was a long time. And actually, so we were filming yesterday, weren't we? And we can tell everybody it's fine because people have been speculating that there has been there's not a Hitch and Claire a-thon, a reunion. We actually did some filming yesterday for SMTV, and they're just doing a celebration of SMTV, and I think mainly because both of us presented it, and we were probably on there more than any other band. We did lots of. It was lovely, actually, wasn't it? We were watching clips of all our performances and our sketches.
It's bizarre though, because you know, I know that we were there and we did it, but watching them back, I don't remember at all like doing it. I look at that person and it feels like it was somebody totally different. It's so weird, but amazing to reminisce and look back on. It was such an amazing time. It was so good. And that year that we spent together doing the album and stuff, I loved it. It was brilliant, and I'm so proud of that album. I really am. Yeah,
I'm proud of that whole year, and I know it went off to a sticky start, but it was just so iconic for me, especially at the SMTV, because we were talking about it yesterday on camera, that it was the perfect marriage. Because you used to go on SMTV and you weren't afraid to make a fool of yourself. You know, you were given, comedy teeth, glasses and a big old afro wig. But the same in Steps, everybody thought we were taking ourselves really seriously. But really, we look like tropical fruits. You know, we look like bananas.
We knew that. We did.
But that was the point. And it was almost like a youth club on a Saturday. You know, we'd always meet our pop peers. So there would be Five or Bewitched or... And then you'd see in the corner Mariah Carey just, rehearsing chums or...
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Also in 2020, Warner issued the 3 single EPs onto streaming for the very first time, along with an additional B-sides EP titled Don't Give Up, Don't Let Go. And in 2023, our jaws hit the floor when H and Claire performed DJ Live for the first time in 20 years at Pride Cymru, and they even tried to do the original chorus choreography.
And that's where the story ends for now. But I think we can all agree that Another You, Another Me is calling out for vinyl release. I also definitely need some more H and Claire Pride performances. Fascination, we know you have connections. Lisa did last year, Claire did this year. H and Claire next year, let's make it happen.
I want Another You, Another Me on white vinyl.
Yes.
White.
Or white, because all the, it's all very white. The artwork is all very white. So I just think it would really suit a white vinyl or a clear vinyl.
Or spray tan vinyl.
Spray tan. Yeah, H and Claire really did find the spray tan in this era. They really did find the body bronze. Yeah.
Like Claire says it in the one of the clips in part 1. She's like, "Oh, they had to spray tan us because we were both so white."
Pale.
So yeah, I want a spray tan vinyl.
Yeah.
No, I think a white vinyl would be an excellent addition to your catalogue.
Yeah, 100%. But yes, I too would also love to see these songs performed in some way moving forward. When we were really doing this deep dive and I was going back and listening to this music, it's sort of sad in a way that there is a complete body of work that just isn't being performed. These are, there's 3 top 10 singles that are never just
mentioned,
never performed. Claire could very easily be performing DJ or All Out of Love. I mean, she's done it before. There's so many incredible tracks on here that I would just love to see them have a little bit of a resurgence in a moment because they thoroughly deserve it.
I would love just like a fan moment of like a mashup of Anastasia's Another One Day in Your Life with All I Want Is You.
Yeah, Gareth Shortland, if you're listening, that's your mission.
That's your job.
I will DM him after
Steve
this.
Anderson, if you're listening.
Of course, Steve Anderson.
If you're listening,
yes.
work that into the next solo set of Claire's. Yeah, I'm with you there, Scott and Brad. Like this, if I can see a live version of All Out of Love, like performed in front of me, I can expire. I'm good.
I want the dance break though.
Absolutely, I want to smash the glass.
Yeah,
like I'm at a Greek wedding. Like, let's do it.
And just quick flowers as well to Scott. You did a brilliant job editing this one. You did all those wonderful grabs. I know it was a lot of hard work, but I think all of our listeners will agree that it is really, I mean, let's be honest, there's no real kind of place that have celebrated H and Claire. And, you've really collected like a robust episode with all these bits and bobs from the website.
Yep.
From archive.com, like...
Oh, there's been a few FBI insertions in there
Brad,
as well.
The FBI Brad was in there too.
Absolutely, yeah.
With my Rage
Kudos
playlist
to you,
from
my friend.
2002.
Kudos to both of you.
But I really think what I think the 3 of us wanted to achieve with these 2 episodes was to celebrate this era and look at it. Sometimes it is looked upon in a bit of a negative light. And we really wanted to change that narrative, much like what we did when we spoke to Point 4 about the Unleashed album. And, we really wanted to give it its moment that it deserved. And I think that we wanted to do the same thing for H and Claire. We really wanted to celebrate the era, celebrate the success they did have, celebrate the music that they did create, the incredible performances they did. They crammed a lot into 12 months, and I'm really happy that we have been able to do that and to really celebrate this era that really should just be celebrated more and talked about more. And yeah, happy that we could do it.
Maybe in 10 years, we'll get to do the same for Light Up the World.
Moving on. No.
Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely agree. It's time to celebrate, actually.
Yeah.
It's time. Like, the band have moved on, and it's time for the fans to move on as well, and not get bogged down into the negative of, like you said, Scott, when they came about, and the negative light that has been painted in. Let's celebrate it. Because there's two very talented people who led that, and they deserve it. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode, but before we do that, Here and Now is playing from the 9th to the 30th of November at the Alexandra Theatre in Birmingham. So for more information, go to thestepsmusical.com. Scott has mentioned at the top of this episode about the fan night, the pre-show fan event before that, so keep an eye on our socials for more information as well. H, Claire, Faye and Lee all have shows and pantos coming up, and you can get more information of these by going to their respective link in bio on their Instagram pages. And for us, you can give us a like, a rate, a 5-star rating, which we still have. Please give us another one, or subscribe wherever you get your podcast fix from, and don't forget to follow us at Glitter Steps Pod on Instagram, X or TikTok. And individually, again, if you want to follow any of us, you can find our social handles in the show notes. But until then, next time, we'll see you soon.
It's
Bye,
Steptacular
boys.
time next time. Steptacular month. Yep. Exciting.
Hopefully it's not a tragedy.
Never say never again.
Boys, you're everything that matters to me.
Bye all.